As you probably know, Qualcomm is an absolute giant in the semiconductor universe, specifically when it comes to mobile chips. There has been perhaps no other company other than Qualcomm that has made so much money off of this massive wave of smartphone adoption during the 2010s. However, the smartphone market isn't quite the growth industry it was in the 2010s, with the exception of this upgrade cycle to 5G, which we'll talk about here in a minute. For the rest of the 2020s, smartphones are probably going to be a much slower growth industry. And in fact, we're probably headed into some sort of earnings recession right now as consumers pare back their spending on consumer electronics. What that means is probably lower smartphone sales this year, possibly into 2023. That hurts Qualcomm. Enter Qualcomm Automotive Investor Day. So Qualcomm has a new CEO, Cristiano Amon, and he has talked a lot about this one technology platform, essentially taking everything Qualcomm does for the smartphone market, taking those same chips and applying them to other devices. And this has been a big win for Qualcomm, specifically in IoT, Internet of Things. So that would be like industrial equipment, commercial equipment that you might use on the job that now suddenly has some sort of connection, internet connection, be that maybe via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, maybe even 4G or 5G. They're also now extending that to automakers, trying to take that same technology and extend it to automakers. What is Qualcomm Automotive exactly? Well, essentially, it's a lot of what your phone does, but applied to a car. So a lot of the chips simply control maybe the cockpit functionality. So like your audio visual things that you can control if your car has a touch screen now. So it's essentially like a big giant smartphone or tablet screen. Qualcomm's there. They also have processors that control connectivity. So that might be a 4G or 5G connection, Wi-Fi connection, or Bluetooth in your car. And then, of course, also processors that help bring in all of the data coming in from all of these new sensors on your vehicle. So that might be sensing other vehicles on the road, sensing infrastructure on the road, pedestrians, something that's sometimes referred to as V2X, vehicle to everything connectivity. So they have processors that help gather up all that data and process it. And you can see from this revenue breakdown chart for Qualcomm over the last couple of years, you see right off the bat there, the top line, handsets, smartphones, and RF front end absolutely exploded higher in 2021. That's because of the big upgrade cycle to 5G. IoT, also respectable gains in 2021. Automotive, 51% growth in 2021 was actually the slowest growing segment. However, you fast forward to 2022, the reopening of the economy after the early effects of the pandemic starting to wear off, handsets are still growing incredibly fast. However, that is going to slow down. You see RF front end has slowed to just a single digit increase in the most recent quarter. Handsets are also going to slow down, probably not as dramatically as 5G phones are still rolling out. But you see now automotive emerging as one of, if not soon to be, Qualcomm's fastest growing segment. 350 million. They just said at Automotive Investor Day, they expect now about 1.3 billion in full year sales to automakers. That's a roughly 33% increase over last year. And they also increased their total design win to $30 billion. $30 billion. That was the big headline announcement at Qualcomm's Automotive Investor Day. What exactly does that mean? Because 30 billion is a big number, even for Qualcomm, hauling in close to 17, 18 billion this year on handsets. 30 billion is bigger than even that. Does that mean Qualcomm Auto is going to be bigger than the smartphone market? Short answer, no, it does not. What it does mean, though, is over the course of the next decade, Qualcomm has this pipeline with automakers and original manufacturers that help make parts for automakers. They have this design pipeline worth about 30 billion. So they think, as it stands right now, they could realize 30 billion in revenue over the course of the next decade, roughly. So still a pretty big number. What that means on an annual basis is they think by their fiscal year 2026, so about 4 years from now, they'll do about 4 billion in automotive revenue that year. By 2031, a whole decade out from now, they see that increasing to 9 billion per year or more. So automotive isn't about to become Qualcomm's biggest revenue segment yet, but it's on its way to becoming a much, much more significant part of the business. What does that mean for you as a Qualcomm shareholder? Well, this stock, if you do a quick search on your favorite financial media site, you're probably going to see some price to earnings ratio of 11 or less than 11 for Qualcomm. It's just under 11 right now as I record this. On a free cash flow basis, it's about 21, 22 times trailing 12-month free cash flow. Basically, the market is paranoid right now that we're headed for a recession. That smartphone segment is going to get blown up. So Qualcomm stock is trading on the cheap. But there's a lot going on at Qualcomm these days. Automotive being the big one that they just talked about this past week. They see being able to get these chips that they've specialized in with smartphones over the last 2 decades into lots of other markets. And that should be a significant growth driver for Qualcomm in the coming years. In addition to that, in conversations I've been able to have with their CFO, Akash Palkawala, in recent months, he said many of these markets that they're entering actually have higher profit margins than the smartphone market. So kind of a dual benefit here for Qualcomm. Sustained gradual growth thanks to the entry into these new markets, higher profit margins. Is Qualcomm stock cheap? It sure looks like it to me if you're planning on holding for the next 5 years or so. So like with everything chip stock right now, expect a really bumpy road, especially in the next 6 months, maybe even for the next year as the economy kind of grapples with the risk of recession, Federal Reserve hiking interest rates. But if you're looking well beyond that and at the opportunity Qualcomm has ahead of it with its automotive segment, this one is definitely worth keeping an eye on right now, I think. Thanks for tuning in this week. It was a busy one with NVIDIA and Qualcomm both having large investor updates. But I appreciate you watching. Hope you found the information useful and helpful in your investing journey. Make sure to subscribe below. We'll be back next week. We'll be talking about more chip stocks and some of the interesting things they're working on, talking about some stuff that's worth keeping an eye on right now. Until next time, I'm Nick with Chip Stock Investor.